why does India not have this? It's unique to India today, but it's not something which has not been done before. It's in fact something which has worked phenomenally.
Hey everyone, this is Minejan and welcome back to another episode of Modernizing Biz podcast. On this episode, we have Satyajeet with us. Satyajeet is from Deciml. Satyajeet is having a very good experience about financing, microfinancing. I'm super excited for this conversation. This episode is going to be very special for all the kids, all the teenage, and all the people under 25 out there.
Hey Manish, doing very well, thank you. Thanks for having me here.
So I want to know like back journey when, how, and when you got the idea of Deciml, right? So I'm very excited to know about that backstory when the idea erupted, and what was your background towards that?
Yeah, so I used to actually run an agri-tech startup back in the day, right? Which I exited in December 2019, and post which lockdown hit in 2020 March. It was just during that time, I was just reading. There was a lot of time on hand. I was catching up with a couple of people. During that moment, I caught up with my professor, my CFA professor, and we were just having a general conversation about where the world of finance is headed, what's happening across the world, best case practices, and that's when we stumbled upon this concept of spare change investing. It's not it's unique to India today, but it's not something which has not been done before. It's in fact something which has worked phenomenally well in the Western markets to get younger people to get started on their investment journey, right? And we were just discussing this, and stumbled upon this question: is why does India not have this, right? Of course, now there are a lot of spare change investing apps, but back in 2020 March, India had none, right? So we were just discussing about why does India not have this kind of a concept, and uh, just decided we should give this a shot. Investment penetration in India was quite low. Internet penetration in India was rapidly increasing,
Hmm.
and also since demonetization, what was a major change that had happened was we'd moved away from cash and we were moving on to digital payments, right? So it just also coincided with the fact that in that year, India had the youngest uh, population. So just between 18 to 28, we had 367 million kids in
Hmm.
2020 in India, right? So all of these factors just coming together, we thought that it's an ideal time to launch a product like this. Continued doing some market research over the next 6 to 7 months, and in November 2020 was when we incorporated the company and got started.
Perfect. Now, so you touched the point that you have a from agri-tech background and now you jumped into the fintech, right? So what are the scope in terms of business and everything you have seen while at the time of launching Decimal?
So I think fintech had started booming since a couple of years now, right? I think the intent to save money, to better manage your money, right, was always there amongst Indians, but some tools were not easily accessible. There were a lot of middlemen. If you wanted to invest money, you needed a broker, you need a wealth manager. With apps like Zerodha, Grow, Upstocks, all of these coming up, things had gotten significantly easier, right? With even on the payment side, with Paytm and Google Pay, things had gotten so much smoother. So fintech as an industry had started peaking already, and I think going forward also at least over the next 10 to 15 years, right? I'm very bullish on this industry, and I think India's primed for a fintech revolution, which has already started, and I see that only getting bigger and better over the next 10 years.
Perfect. So, if you want to explain the concept of decimal to a teenage, so in simple terms, what is it all about and how it can impact one's life?
See, very simple concept, right? Say you go and you buy dairy milk, right, and it costs about 15
Yeah.
rupees. You open any of your digital payment apps, you open your Paytm, Google Pay, and you make that payment, right? The amount getting deducted from your account is rounded up to the nearest 10. So 20 rupees gets deducted. 15 rupees will go to the grocery store for your chocolate, and the additional 5 rupees is invested on your behalf in mutual funds. So at any given point,
Perfect.
these 3, 4, 5 rupees keep getting invested on your behalf.
Perfect. So if you, as per this study, like if you can give a basic data in a month, right? So a person who is spending 3,000, 4,000 in a month, maximum, I'm telling, for a kid, right? So how much amount of money they are getting to be invested in a month?
So what happened? I'll tell you about the data that we have currently. So our users are investing 1,359 rupees per user per month on an
Perfect.
average. Now, what happens is, the first question that generally always comes up to me is, how does spare change amount to say 1,359 rupees, right? Roughly 1,400 rupees, right? It's 3, 4 rupees. There's a very big difference between spending patterns of a teenager or a 20-year-old compared to spending patterns of a 30-year-old, right? A 30-year-old might spend about say 10, 15, 20,000 rupees in a month, right? But he'll or say, let's say, 300 to 500 rupees in a day, does it
Hmm.
in one or maximum two transactions, right? The frequency of transactions is not so much. A younger person, a 20-year-old, might spend about 100, 150, 200 rupees in a day, right? But he does it through multiple transactions. His coffee
Yeah.
is generally not at Starbucks, right? His coffee is at the Thela outside college, right? When he goes to fill fuel, he says, 30 rupees, 50 rupees, right? The bike should be running till tomorrow, day after I'm going to come back, right? A 30-year-old who generally will go to fill fuel will say, top it up completely, right? 1 week, I don't want to come back, right? So, which is why the older person, a 30-year-old, might spend more, but does it through lesser number of transactions. A 20-year-old might spend less, does it through more number of transactions. Spare change investing is a concept that's linked to the number of transactions you do, not the amount of transaction,
Hmm.
right? Something for 18 rupees, the roundup is 2. 498 rupees, the roundup is 2, right? Which is how the younger people end up investing significantly higher amounts compared to the older people. And this is a concept that we had bought in to get early 20-year-olds started on their investment journey. So that's how it makes it an ideal product for them.
Perfect. So I want to know, like, what's the one point, since you are pretty well connected with the western part of the world as well, and now you're aware about what is currently scenario in India related to the financial literacy, right? So what do you think? So what is the, like, need? इतनी क्या बड़ी need थी about this product in our country? So what impact is gonna create in kids?
So I think the first primary question that always stuck with me was, in India, we didn't have to really create an intent, right? We didn't have to generate intent towards investment or to saving, right? I mean, just imagine if you were to stop a 21-year-old on the road and ask him, uh, पैसा save करना चाहिए क्या? Right? Everyone says yes, right? But if you ask him, do you save money or do you invest money, right? That's where the ball drops. We keep talking about India's investment penetration as low as 3%, some say 4%, significantly lower, right? It's less than 5%. Let's take it at that. The amount of intent amongst people, right, is significantly higher. So where does this mismatch actually come from, right? This mismatch actually comes from the fact that we're never taught about money. We're never taught to think in terms of money, right? Now, let's take an example about our upbringing, right? About when we were growing up as kids. Let's take my example, right? Say 5, 6 years old, right? And I want to buy a car, like a remote control car, right? What is the kind of questions that go through my mind, right? The first question that I have in my mind is, should I ask my mother, should I ask my father, right?
Hmm.
Now, if I decided that, okay, I have to ask my dad, right? So now I have
Yeah.
to think about, when is his day off? When is he in a good mood, right? He's a cricket fan. Sachin scored a century. I'm going to ask him today, right? I'm going to get my car, right?
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
I'm sure majority of us, including you, grew up making similar kind of decisions, right? Now, if you actually just move to a US kid, right?
Yeah.
Domestic help is a very expensive service there, right? So which is why you have kids who will do the dishes, you will have kids who mow the lawn, right? So they get $1 for every time that he mows the lawn. He gets $1 for every time that he does the dishes, right? He knows, okay, I'm going to do these 2 to 3 chores. I'm going to earn $3 today, right? If I keep doing this over 7 days, right, I'm going to have about $15 to $20, and I can go and buy that car, right? Now he's suddenly started thinking in terms of money, right? Now, if you take them 10 years ahead, right, and say I want to take a trip somewhere, right? I am
Mm.
going to go back now in college, right? We're, you're not working, you're not saving money, right? You don't have any savings. So you go back to asking your parents, right? Papa, I want to go here with my friends. This is what I need, right? But if you look at that US kid, a kid who's waiting tables at a restaurant in the US,
Mm.
as a
Mm.
student, right? Someone who is flipping burgers at McDonald's as a student, right? So they so trained to working on minimum wage, right? They'll work on minimum wage. They know that, okay, I want to go to Europe. I will work on minimum wage for the next 8 months, right? Save that money, take that money and go to Europe, right? Subconsciously, it's not come into formal education, but subconsciously, what happens is they started thinking in terms of money, right? Now, if you take them ahead, right, at 21, 22, right, in India, we just think that a switch is flipped, right? Our education is over, we started earning money.
Mm.
So now Minesh knows how to manage his finances, right? While there's an intent there, right, Minesh does not necessarily know how to go about managing it, right?
Yeah.
So this is a gap that really comes out, right? Which we're trying to fill, which which I think the entire education system, or we as a country and on an overall level, have figured out and trying to fix. With Deciml, what we're trying to do is, we realize that there's this gap, right? We realize that filling this gap is going to take some time, right? But in that period, we should not miss out on how to get started on their investments,
Yeah.
right? So we're just solving a very basic problem. We're not saying that spare change investing will, fund your retirement or is going to buy your dream home tomorrow,
Mm.
right? But is it something which will just get you started on your investment journey, right? There's one thing about saying, you know, one thing about coming and telling you, you know what, Manish, you invest 10 rupees, this is how compounding works, and this is how your money will grow, right? There's another thing about just coming, taking 10 rupees from you, right? And saying,
Yeah.
you know what, here's 11 rupees, right? And then you're like, oh, wait, then does 100 become 110? Does 1,000 become 1,100, right? That's when your mind actually starts working, right? So the practical demonstration of it with your own money is significantly more powerful than
Hmm.
telling you, or you attending a course on the power of compounding.
Perfect. So you touched the point about the education and the training, right? So it is not the formal education that creates the impact. It's about the self development which brings into the picture.
No, I think both are important, right? And I think both should be there. But currently, what we have is, if you look at the number of doctors, engineers, designers,
Mm.
people basically from a non-finance background, right, that we keep graduating every year. Now, I've spoken to so many of my friends who come from non-finance backgrounds, right? Till 10th standard, in our schools, primary schools, there is absolutely no subject which touches base upon this, right?
Yeah.
11, 12, if you've taken, science or arts, again, zero subjects, and then you go into your specialization. You have 4 years of engineering. Where is that personal finance subject, right?
Mm.
Which semester covers that? Right? So if you look at our formal education is not covering it anywhere, right? But neither is anything outside. Today, I see the awareness levels are significantly higher, right, compared to when 15 years back, 20 years back when I was growing up. And that's because of the exposure to social media. You have phenomenal people like Rachna,
Mm.
Ankur, who are
Yeah.
educating the people. You have Raj, Ranveer, their podcasts, your podcast, right? You're educating the people. So there's a higher level of awareness, but I think a more deeper understanding of things or a practical hands-on experience is still missing, right? And those
Mm.
things, So I think both things are important. I think formal education also is important, and it should not be that people who are pursuing the field of finance are the only ones who are exposed to, because personal finance is very different from people who are studying
Yeah.
to become a chartered accountant or a financial analyst, right? Personal finance is something which is applicable to everyone: doctors, engineers, and people who are pursuing finance as well.
So what do you think? So all of these skill sets related to the personal finance is going to impact one's career, personal life, professional life, right? So let's take an example. People will not understand the compounding. Let's take an example. If you talk about like invest 5,000 a month or 2,000 a month, in 10 years you'll get a crore. Right, in 20 years you'll do this. So these are the things that is currently happening in the market.
Yeah,
So people want to know what is going to happen in a year. Chika, I'll start.
yeah,
What is going to happen in a year? So what is one thing about patience that if you can touch out? So how one can deal with that particular point, because that is very high in kids. They don't want an iPhone in 2 years later. They want it 2 months back from now,
yeah.
right? So that is the one thing.
Yeah, so I think such an important point, right? Today, what happens is again, exposure to social media has its pros and cons, right?
Hmm.
So we had in I think last year we had this entire crypto boom, because
Yeah.
everyone is talking about it. A slight drop, and then you have panic sell, right? And I think same thing happens with entering the stock market as well. Uh, these are points which happen where you know uh, people start taking decisions based on someone else guiding them, right? And where what people one need to understand is everyone's finances are very personal to them, right?
Hmm.
I might have a home loan going on, you might be paying rent, right? Your expenses are very different from mine. You and I both might be earning say 50,000 rupees in a month, right? But how you spend that 50,000 rupees and how I spend that 50,000 rupees is going to be significantly different, right? That's very circumstantial. So, and again, which is why it's called personal finance, right? It's
Yeah.
very personal to you. The biggest issue that people, the biggest problem is that they will hear someone talk on say an Instagram or Twitter, right, or YouTube, and they will think that, or this applies word to word to my life as well, okay?
Hmm.
Or there is this successful investor, say, who's bought ABC stock, right? And so I will buy that ABC stock as well, right? Because oh, he's buying it, right? Or you often have investors who put out their portfolio, right? So
Yeah.
these are the stocks that I have currently bought, or these are the stocks that are in my portfolio, right? People will take and replicate that word to word, right? Stock to stock. It's not how it works, right? His risk appetite is different, your risk appetite is different, right? There are
Hmm.
multiple things that come into this thing. He might have kids at that age, which he might be planning for their education. He might have a short-term view
Hmm.
on things, you might have a long-term view, you're 20, so a lot of these things come into the so which is why I think get started in very small amounts, right? You know the lots of fears that you actually have. I don't understand, I will lose money, I don't understand the markets, right?
Hmm.
So which is why again, coming back to the concept of spare change, right? You go to a restaurant and the bill is 495, you put a 500 rupee note, right? That 5 rupees is something you're not even picking up, right? What we're doing is we're taking that 5 rupees, right, and we're just showing you how it works, right? It's almost like a test environment, right?
Yeah.
But with real money. So as soon as you start getting a hang of these things, right, you will start learning more. You will start understanding more, right? Your conversations will be different, right?
Hmm.
Today, you just there are buzzwords being thrown around like compounding and inflation,
Yeah.
and those are things that you go and talk about, right? But if you say that, hey, you know what? I had invested say 1,500 rupees last month. Next month I'd invested 1,200 rupees. This
Yeah.
is what my money has grown to. I think the quality of those conversations, I think the understanding of the entire world changes, and I think that'll lead to significantly better outcomes going forward. But
Okay.
one
So now,
thing is, should not blindly copy someone else's investment strategy. I don't
perfect.
think that's
So
wise.
So what's your ideal take if you want to jot down couple of points, like what's the best way of taking the education related to personal finance? Is it a book? Is it a show? Is it a course? What is the best mode, or it's through the experiences?
I think one thing is, it again happens on parallel tracks. One is, I think personal finance should be a mandatory subject in our
Hmm.
formal education. Irrespective of the field that you choose, whether it's in, and there are different levels of personal finance as well, right? Taxation is also a part of personal finance. That's something that can be covered much later. But things about, just inflow and outflow of money, saving money, right, are things that can be covered much earlier, like in primary school, right, up to your 10th standard. Taxation and things like this could be covered in your college years. So I definitely feel the inclusion for, the need for inclusion of personal finance in your formal education, and also feel parallelly on the track, right? Parents take care in Indian households, right? Parents take care of all of your finances, at least up until you graduate, right?
Hmm.
Um, don't get me wrong. It's their way of showing love, right? They want to protect you. They've probably,
Yeah.
just want to give you more than they always had, and they come from a good place, right? But it handicaps us significantly, right? What we need to do is allow some amount of independence there, allow some amount of making your own decisions, making your own mistakes. Mistakes will happen, right? If you don't make them at 18, you'll make them at 28, and at 28 they'll be more costly than you making them at
Right.
18,
Yeah.
right? So mistakes will happen. I think certain budgets, like you will be given say 5,000 rupees every month, right? And then you figure out, if you want to get a meal outside, right, then you figure out in that your fuel, everything, right, whatever that
Hmm.
is for each one, right? 5,000, 10,000, 1,000, right? So this is your fixed budget. I think from an early age, if you start budgeting, if you start managing that 5,000 rupees, right? Say you have your birthday coming up in 3 months, and you want to take your friends out, right,
Hmm.
for dinner, right? Then you know that probably you're going to need about 3,000 rupees in that, right? So then every month from this month, can I start putting 700, 800 aside,
Yeah.
right? This kind of planning, right, subconsciously just starts developing the mind, and as soon as that happens, this is just going to be replicated onto, like, that 5,000 becomes 5 lakhs later, right? This is going to be replicated, but you will understand the fundamentals of money, the fundamentals of inflows and outflows of money, right? And which is critical.
So now I'm having a like a very sense of I don't know how to term it, but let's take an example of a 25-year-old, right?
Yeah,
Graduated from college, got a job, working in a corporate. They have almost 1 year of experience. They are also not good in personal financing, right? So if you talk about they got a salary of 30K, they buy a MK bag of 12,000 the other
yeah,
day, right? So there is one thing that is happening again, the cause of social media and the glamorous life and everything. So how they can train their minds, right? Because a kid might learn something, might unlearn something, but for a 26 year old, it's a very tough for them, right? They think, so now I'm started earning, now things will go ahead, I'll buy a car, I'll buy this, I do this, I do that. There's a lot of baggage start happening. So how they can train their mindsets in about personal finance, and how they can plan a basic budgeting for themselves.
yeah. So I think it's something that I see happening a lot, right? I mean, imagine you're getting your salary on the 20th, right? Sorry, you're getting your salary on the 5th, right? Your Till the 5th, your Amazon cart is full,
Yeah.
right? And as soon as the salary hits 5th, you go back home in the evening. I think before dinner, right? These are the things I needed to buy. Salaries in tuck 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 tuck, right? And probably half your salaries gone already,
Gone.
right? Uh, it's a common practice. So one thing is, a very common saying, right, in finance, personal finance, is your income minus your expenses should never be your savings, right? Your income minus your savings should be your expenses, right?
Hmm.
So your primary focus has to be on, this is what I need to save. Whatever is left, right, needs to be. I think one thing is, one major problem that I see is people don't have a clear understanding of what their fixed expenses for the month are, right? And I ask this to people often, right? And it's not a number that they have on top of their mind, right? In terms of, say, you might have moved out for work, right? So you might be paying rent. uh, you might have a house help, you might have groceries, you might have your fuel expenses, right? If I ask a lot of people, what is your fuel expense for the month, right? Or if you commute by an Ola or an Uber, what is that expense for the month? And they say, it costs me about 200 rupees to get to office. I'm like, that's one trip, right? But how often do you use that? What is the monthly expense? I don't think people have these things, right? I know a lot of apps that have come up which help you categorize your spends and do this.
Hmm.
But in the absence of that, I think the first step to take is to start noting down every single expense. Right? Take an Excel sheet. Right? Just note down every single expense. Okay, segregate that into necessary and non-necessary, right? You going out and eating, it's infrequent, or it's not something which is a fixed expense, it's not necessary, right? You can next month decide to go out every day of the month, you could decide to go out none of, so it's not a necessary expense that's going to happen, right? So what are your necessary expenses? That's your rent, that's your house help, that's your commuting expense, your
Hmm.
groceries, right? Do you have an understanding of these, right? So take those and first budget for those out, right? If you're getting your salary on the 5th, right, your phone expense, everything, you're getting your salary on the 5th, 6th, pay these expenses, right? These have to go out. After that, then what you have, right, take out some amount of money, right, which is your uh,
The saving
play
part.
money, play money, right? I think
Yeah.
a 10% of, if you're earning 1 lakh rupees, 10,000 rupees, you will end up going out, right? You will want to, I mean, you're earning money, right? So it's not going to happen that, no, I will not go out, I will not make any expense, right? My expenses were, say, 20,000 rupees, which are my rent and everything, 80,000 rupees I will invest. That's not going to happen, right? Because the more you keep suppressing that, right, it's just going to be like, up to
Hmm.
karna hi nahi mujhe, right? Now I
Right.
want to just go, right? So take this thing out, right? But budget for it, saying that, okay, this is 10,000 rupees or this is 5,000 rupees, right? Personal to you, whatever that amount is. And make sure that your going out is only limited to that. If you've
Hmm.
exhausted that by the 10th of the month, right, then you sit at home for the next 20 days, right? Very simple things. It does not have to be complicated, right? Today,
Yeah.
what happens is, again, because we're not taught about this from a very young age, right? Now, suddenly, now if I tell you, for someone who speaks French, right, I think they find it very easy, right? For someone in France, right? Why? Because they learned it from a thing. Today, if I tell you, you know what, Manish, let's go and learn French, right? We're going to find it significantly hard,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
the same thing. It's the same thing for everything, right? So personal finance also today. Now, if I tell you that, you should start budgeting, right? You're going to
Hmm.
find it difficult. If you did this from a much younger age, it's something that would come very naturally to you, right? So I think it's just about starting to first map what my necessary expenses are, right? Once that is done, then the amount that is left, right? Then first is you plan your investments, right?
Hmm.
Say that this is like you have your Amazon cart full on the 5th, right? Have your investment cart full till the 5th, right?
Perfect.
And then what is remaining is something that you end up spending.
Perfect. All right. Thanks a lot, Satyajit. I hope like a lot of audience will get tons of value out of this particular episode. And this one's going to be one of my favorite on the list. And looking forward to record some mind blowing content for the level two, for the phase two of financial training. Thanks a lot, Satyajit.
Thanks, Ganesh. Thanks for having me.